So here we are, putting your faith to the test. A husband says to his spouse, I don't want to go to church today. I don't like the service. I don't like the people. I don't like the sermons. I don't like the pettiness. I don't like the gossip. I don't like to give my money in the basket. I just don't want to be there. To which his spouse softly says, well, yes, but you got to go. You got to be there. You know, you got to go to church with me. And the husband said, why do I have to go? Why do you always say that? To which she replied, because you're the minister. Now, I, for one, am very thankful. People think it's an elitist thing. I have a cleaning lady and her assistant, and they come every 3 weeks to clean my home. I never can clean the way they can clean. I'm not as fast as they are. Takes me a couple hours to finish. I can do a cleaning, but I can only keep up with them. And then they roll in 3 hours of real cleaning, scrubbing and vacuuming and dustings and grumbling. That's usually from me about why we must work so hard to be clean. And then I have to spend maybe an hour or so or more to get it all back together. But then my reward is when I smell that pine sol in the bathroom wafting all up there. Oh, that's so great. Well, you're not surprised to hear my confession as a minister. I spend a lot of time thinking about questions of life. Conversely, I can also be pretty forgetful and blasé about some little things in life, like picking up my clothes and things. I like to do that. And I'm staying, like with some of you in your houses, so I make sure that I do that. But you got to fold it, and then you got to wash it, and then you got to take it out and dry it, and then you got to fold it again. Well, you've heard the phrase, don't air your dirty laundry in public, right? You've heard that. Well, my confession to you is that today I would like to. I'd like to air a bit of our Unitarian Universalist dirty laundry on the floor for anyone to see. Dirty laundry that highlights how we, like all people, are works in progress. We don't always live up to the invitation and the ideals of religious faith that's offered to it. Methodists call this, in their humble way, striving toward perfection, knowing we'll never get to that perfection. Well, each year, right here, remember we had this auction? The auction was pretty good, and I'm an auctionaholic. And people offer their gifts and talents. People help raise money and deepen our community outreach. Now, since I'm not very good at very many things, except maybe stained glass, I'm not a woodworker. I'm certainly not a house cleaner. I might offer something that I am good at, public speaking, I thought. Notice nobody's responding. Next year I had an idea that maybe I would offer one sermon topic to the highest bidder. Now, I wonder if the bidding would be as intense for my sermon as it would be for dinners out or weekends at the shore. I don't think so, but who knows how much one of those sermons might fetch for the church. And one title I had in mind was Sermon on the Amount. Huh? Oh, yeah. Another sermon would be God, Guns, and Gays. Huh? Juice it up. Now there's no doubt that we are living in the United States of America. But the states are divided. Some states are red for Republican conservatism, and other states are blue for liberal Democrats. And now I see popping up on the news, there's purple states which indicates that these states can go either way. Does that mean that we're no longer a nation of red, white, and blue? Are we now red, purple, and blue? Well, in our Unitarian Universalist churches, what does it mean to be liberally religious in a society that's politically conservative? We're living in a politically conservative society here. We are like a beacon of liberal hope. I suppose these words that pop up are references to what kind of state one might be talking about. They're the new code words for our political and some would say religious viewpoints in our nation, even in our Unitarian Universalist congregation. Now, I've witnessed many Unitarian Universalists filled with people who are sort of code labels. Some are religious liberals. And at the same time, they're political conservatives. People who do not know what we're all about think that we are dogmatic and exclusive and stuffy and unfriendly. And they fall asleep during church. Let me assure you, there's no way you're going to do that with me. But I just whatever. Not in this church, but throughout Unitarian Universalism. People in Boston at the UUA offices say we must improve our image and show people who we really are. Well, I've been in many churches. I've been in many synagogues, mosques, and other places of worship where I've been greeted with unfriendliness and I felt unwelcome. And I could tell you stories of people who treated me with disrespect, with disdain. I've been in meetings where people speak as if I have just one political viewpoint and disregard all other perspectives. I've listened to mean-spirited, sometimes hateful words from people on issues, from candidates and politicians. Some believe that I might be supportive of their point of view. Well, all I have to do to illustrate this point is to mention the name Al Sharpton. Well, Al is a personal friend of mine, and we work together on many things, but even today, Al Sharpton is the most hated black man in white America, and everybody knows it. And this morning, I invite us to reflect on what it means to be politically conservative in a religious community that is predominantly liberal. That's what you are. I want us to look in the mirror and ask ourselves some tough questions about how welcoming, how accepting, how loving we truly are to each other. And I want us to explore some deeply felt thoughts of what it means to be religiously liberal, and more importantly, how can we live up to those ideals as we uphold our community. But first, let me get to the dirty laundry. I know that's what you're waiting on. This religious and political tension has revealed something that's been lurking in our churches for a while. The Unitarian Universalism is no longer, in my opinion, a creedless faith. You know, no creeds but deeds. All right. Liberal political beliefs have so infused our liberal religious beliefs that there's a very real doctrinal test for inclusion and acceptance in many, if not most, congregations. You must also be politically liberal, because our representatives in Washington, and even those locally, have so polarized political forces, and because our congregations have become so politically liberal, even those UUs who do not easily meet the criteria for inclusion into the liberal political community, despite their religious beliefs, are in too many cases scorned, ostracized, marginalized in all congregations. Even here, in the good old Unitarian Universalist Church of Tampa, we're a church of white privilege, despite our deep concerns for non-white people. Inherent worth and dignity are being denied even to members of our own Unitarian Universalist faith. Now, I know many people who are leaving churches by the dozens, if not more than that. All churches. Many people who used to attend are different thinking people, and they've left long ago. And even in this church, I spoke with a lot of people who left. I get a list, and I follow the list. And I say, well, I don't go to that church anymore, but I sure would like to talk to you. Well, then why would you like to talk to me? But I'm glad you'd want to talk to me. And we do. I consider myself a center-left political liberal, and I'm still supportive of the campaign to liberate Ukraine. Yet even I have been called, I've been called a warmonger by one Christian minister. I've been called a mass murderer by a conservative seminarian. I've been called a killer of innocent children by some congregant, condescended to and told the errors of my ways by many others who have a different political or religious perspective on the war, or who they wish to be president, or on same-sex marriage, on the morality, if not the legality, of abortion. All those things. Church people attacking motives and the sincerity of other church people are something that none of us should be proud of. None of us who believe in affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of each person, the acceptance of one another in our congregation, the right of conscience, or a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, to name just 4 of the principles that this congregation has covenanted to live by. None of it should be punitive or accusatory. But it is. I recently read an article that wasn't about Unitarian Universalism, but its message hit me right between the eyes. It said, maybe it's time to admit the obvious. We don't really care about that much diversity in our church in America or anywhere. The institutions that talk most about diversity practice it the least. It's appalling that Americans know so little about each other, that many of us are so narrow-minded that we can't tolerate a few people with ideas significantly different than our own. The institutions that talk most about diversity practice it the least. Do you think that sentence applies to us? Well, I have to admit, but too often I think that it does. What has happened to us? What has happened to a religious tradition whose ancestors fought for religious freedom, who sometimes lost their lives over the heretical notion that love used to be so wide and embracing that everyone, no matter what they did or what they believed, would be made whole? What happened to a religious community who championed and led the way, embracing gays, lesbians, bisexuals, transgender people proudly and rightly, and proclaimed their welcoming everybody into their congregation? A little contradiction there, I think. What has happened to love, acceptance, understanding, and compassion for those people who voted for the candidate of another party, for people who profess a belief in God, in Christianity, or in the human spirit? We have forgotten what it means to be liberally religious. We've forgotten that our religion, our moral center, is more important, more critical to who we are and how we live our life than the political flavor of the month. We have forgotten the words of Francis David. You remember him? Who, after convincing the king in Transylvania to lead the first country where religious freedom was the law of the land, and said, we don't have to think alike to love alike. I think that's a great statement. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, there's one phrase of liberalism that I hope to cherish always. It's devotion for the search for truth. It's refusal to abandon the best light of reason. That's a good start for a definition of liberal religion. To be liberally religious is to believe that revelation is not sealed in continuous roadblocks, but it's the belief that spiritual religious quests are not confined to one path or one faith. It's to believe that searching for truth, for divinity, for wisdom, for love, for joy, for compassion, and justice is a lifelong journey that we embark on so that we may live the lives that we possibly can. I like that. And I have a colleague, his name is Robin Myers, and he's in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And he's not a Unitarian Universalist, but he believes that we live now from a political and not a religious center. He says we are religious liberals. The opposite of liberal is not conservative. The opposite of liberal is literal. Change one letter, and you've changed the whole world. For religious liberals, the teachings of religion are symbols, myths, and metaphors that can help us to become better people, better partners, better parents, better citizens. Maybe my favorite definition of liberal religion comes from that great preacher of the Riverside Church, Dr. William Sloane Coffin, who wrote, on the religious side, liberals believe that the integrity of love is more important than the purity of dogma. Dogma is a signpost. Love is a hitching post. Liberals contend that we should sharpen our minds, not narrow them. And we understand that faith, far from clearing up certainty, makes it possible to live with uncertainty. Well, this describes our religion well, I think. But it doesn't describe our politics too well. And that's what gets us into trouble. That's what gets me into trouble sometimes. The last few years have been difficult ones for our country and our faith. Look at that, the 9/11. And then beyond that was Putin's decision to attack Crimea. And beyond that is Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. The realization that faulty intelligence had a role in those decisions. The fight over same-sex marriages. I think it's appalling that you have all of these problems in the world, but the one thing that you're trying to make the most miserable are the people, the very little minority of transgender people that you're trying to enact laws that will make their lives the most miserable. And I don't understand why that's a priority, but it is. You have the impending erosion of reproductive rights for women. A bitter election splintered our country, and even some congregations have become split because of that. The Supreme Court has been exposed for its partisan nature. All of these issues have a moral and religious connection. Deciding when to take another's life, whether that be in a war or in the process of terminating a pregnancy, is difficult. It's complex, it's religious, and it's moral as a question. Who can be married? And the government's role in sanctioning and legalizing a religious sacrament such as marriage is a religious question. Deciding on who we will vote for as president may or may not be a religious question, depending on which issues are the most critical in our decision-making process. Personally, I think that the election is too long. In Great Britain, they have 6 weeks for prime minister. And the last 2 weeks, you're not allowed to go on television to advertise. Now, I like that. I like that a lot. Too much money is being spent on that for years and years, and it is almost preordained who's going to get elected. Now, you know me. You probably know I believe that I intentionally walk a tightrope. Sometimes I fall off, and you remind me that I've fallen off. My challenge is to both comfort the afflicted but afflict the comfortable. What does it mean? It means that this community, this faith, this minister is here to offer healing and comfort, inspiration and guidance, wholeness and love to each and every one of us. It also means that this community, this faith, this minister here is to speak prophetically as a witness about moral, religious, and even political issues when those issues affect the inherent worth and dignity of people. When those issues affect the compassion, equity, and justice that people have access to. Abortion, a just war theory, equal rights for all, global warming. All of these issues have both religious and political ramifications and are worthy of much dialogue and reflection. But as much as our culture, the media, and sometimes us would like to believe that people's opinions and ideas about these issues can be classified as blue-colored or red-colored, the truth is that good-hearted, good-thinking, good-intentioned people can come to a different decision, complex decisions about such issues. People can be religiously liberal, and I can't believe I'm saying this, and they can vote Republican. But they can. People can affirm and promote the goal of world peace and believe that peace is best served by decisions to support the war in Ukraine and push back Vladimir Putin. People can be religiously liberal and believe the best way to eliminate poverty is by implementing welfare reform so the government doesn't offer entitlements that might enable bad behavior more often than help. And people can be religiously liberal and think differently about all of these issues. How do we stop attacking and judging people who believe differently than we do? I don't know, because I'm guilty of attacking and judging people who believe differently than me. I got to improve. I got to change that. How do we engage in meaningful dialogue with those who look at the world wanting the same things that we do? They want peace. They want justice. They want a safe place for their children, and then come to a different conclusion on the best way to accomplish that. I don't know. How do we stop stereotyping and labeling people red, blue, or purple? And how do we start listening in love to each other? You tell me. Maybe we begin by remembering what religion, especially liberal religion, calls us to do. To be generous, to listen, to love. The Sunday after the election, one minister in Tulsa preached a sermon in which he wrote 2 letters, one to the evangelical right and one to the left. I was moved by his words to the religious liberals. He said, for me, the term liberal has always been a positive term. In fact, the first definition of liberal in the dictionary is generous. But I have to be honest, if liberals who claim to be open-minded continue to degrade evangelists, to scorn conservatives as ignorant and self-serving, I don't want to be a liberal. He says if liberals are not willing to recognize that people can be religious and intelligent, then I don't want to be called a liberal. I don't want to be called a Unitarian Universalist if it means that politics supersedes religion and we call people names who vote differently than we do. As we saw at the UUA convention, when there was a very handful of people who wanted to keep the 7 principles, but they came out swinging and euphorically roaring for the change. I don't want to be called these derogatory remarks. If we say we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of everyone, but treat those who think differently than we do with disdain and disgust and derogatory remarks, you can have it. I don't want to be called Unitarian Universalist if people turn away from us because they see us talking about love, yet walking with hate, because we say that we embrace all paths of truth, and then we put barriers up where those paths don't look the same as our path. See, my friends, these are challenging and difficult days for us, very much. Some of us are shocked and dismayed that our leaders reaffirm policies and people and religious values that we passionately oppose. At least I do. Many of us are afraid for the future of our country. I am afraid for our world, because no matter who we voted for, it's still there. All of us are yearning for more peace and more justice and more compassion and more love for ourselves and our children and our planet. We've chosen a challenging religious tradition to plant ourselves in. I know I have. It's really a challenge. A religious tradition that doesn't demand that we share creeds, but demands that we share a covenant with each other to be together in respect and compassion and love. When we fall short of loving each other, when we fall short of listening to each other, when we fall short of respecting each other, when we fall short of the ideals and generosity of spirit that our liberal religion demands of us, may we remember we are a religion of hope and not hate. And we could be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. I leave you this morning with the words from my friend. Maybe you can get this book. He's a great writer. His name is Jim Wallace. He's an evangelical Christian minister and a progressive. It's titled God's Politics, Why the Right Gets It Wrong and the Left Doesn't Get It. It should be mandatory reading for anyone who wonders how we can make the blues, the reds, and the purples come around in faith and politics in this country. It's an excellent reference, excellent book. Wallace writes, it's time to spark a new public conversation all over the country, what the moral values in politics should be. Religion doesn't fall neatly into the left or to the right. Personal responsibility and social responsibility are both at the heart of religion, and the two together could make a very powerful and compelling vision for the future of our bitterly divided nation. In a deeply polarized nation, where half the people feel crushed, the need for some kind of political healing and reconciliation becomes clear and could be one of our most important roles for any religious community. You can think about that when you say that you are for community. The community itself has to be community in the truest sense of the word. But that shouldn't mean that we compromise deeply held convictions on any side, instead building our most deeply held values that might be best as a way to move forward. Now there's the greatest political leader, spiritual leader of all time. My grandchildren just sent me pictures of them at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington, D.C. They're there on a visit with my son and my daughter-in-law. It was great to see that. And he said the religious community could help a divided nation find common ground by moving to a higher ground. Did you ever think of that? Let us move to a higher ground and be a beacon for how to engage in disagreements and dialogue with open hearts and open minds. Let us be a religion of people that proclaims understanding and compassion for all people, not just people we agree with. At least that's what I need to do. I only want to applaud the people that agree with me. I I do not want to even give time to the people that don't. I've got to work on that. And maybe you do too if you're honest with yourself. Let us show the world that we need not think alike to love alike. That hate cannot get rid of hate. Only love can do that. Darkness cannot get rid of darkness. Only light can do that. Thank you.